My dear friends, I'm so grateful to be here with you today. What a blessing to share this space together as we explore the path toward higher awareness. I've been reflecting lately on how we can surround ourselves with wisdom from those who walk before us. Those remarkable souls who've broken through the limited thinking that often holds us back. When we open ourselves to their ideas, something magical happens. We gain insights that help us become the fullest expression of who we truly are. I'd like to share with you some principles that have guided my own journey. These aren't just concepts I've read about in books. They come from living a life where I've gradually learned to be independent of the good opinion of others. I've discovered how to consult something deep within myself rather than constantly looking outside for validation or approval. The first principle that transformed my existence comes from a 10th century scholar named Tialapa, who said, "Have a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing. I've made this central to how I move through the world." No one knows enough to be a pessimist about anything. When we close our minds to what's possible for us or for humanity, we close off the extraordinary genius that resides within each of us. Now, having an open mind doesn't mean finding fault with everything you've been taught. It means opening yourself to infinite possibilities, to the idea that anything and everything is possible. Most people I've noticed spend their lives actively looking for occasions to be offended. They're actually hoping to find reasons to be upset. And there's certainly no shortage of opportunities. The way someone dressed, what someone said, the news on television. But a mind that's open to everything and attached to nothing says, I'm never looking for anything to be offended by. When someone expresses a view different from yours, try responding with, "That's an interesting point of view. I've never considered that before." Watch what happens when you approach life this way. The second principle is profoundly simple, yet often overlooked. You can't give away what you don't have. And people who struggle to give love can't give it because they don't have it within themselves to give. If I want to give you a dozen oranges, I must first have those oranges. Otherwise, it's just empty rhetoric. There's a law in this magnificent universe that I call the law of attraction. You get back from the world what you put out into it. If you're putting out the message that you're not worthy of attracting something beautiful, the universe will respond accordingly. So many people come to me saying, I keep attracting the same kind of people, the same events, the same disappointments into my life. Why does this keep happening? I gently suggest that perhaps that's the very message they're sending to the universe. The ocean of abundance is unlimited. You can take from it endlessly without diminishing it one bit. Or you can approach it with an eyedropper, taking just a tiny amount and saying, that's all that seems available for me. What's fascinating is that if your message to the universe is gimme, 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 the universe's response will echo exactly, mech, gimme. Gimme. You'll find yourself always striving, never arriving, always feeling neglected. If you shift your energy and say to the universe, how may I serve? The universe responds, how may I serve you? When you take your attention off what you're demanding and focus instead on what you can give, everything changes. I know this from personal experience. The moment I shifted from what can I get to how can I help, abundance began flowing into my life in ways I never imagined possible. There are no justified resentments. I once visited a support group where a sign on the wall read, "There are no justified resentments in this group." What this means is that carrying resentment about anything or anyone will harm you and create despair in your life. No one ever dies from a snake bite. Once you're bitten, you're bitten. That's a fact, and you cannot be unbitten. But it's the venom continuing to pour through your system that destroys you. The resentments you carry are like that venom. Think about the things you might be resentful about. Perhaps someone borrowed money and never repaid it. Someone was cruel or abusive, or someone walked out on you. These are things you've justified in your heart as worthy of your resentment. But those resentments will always harm you, not the other person. I like to use a metaphor from the game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? To reach the first level, the $1,000 level, you must answer some straightforward questions. In my metaphor, that $1,000 level means you'll leave with something valuable. You must send blame out of your life. Blame has to go. If you're sitting there With an illness, you say without guilt, it's mine. I take responsibility for it. If you've been through difficult circumstances, if you have minimal financial security, if your relationships are struggling, you say, I am here because of the choices I've made. The higher $32,000 level comes from a beautiful quotation I found in reading Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. If you become steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards others, all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in your presence. When you reach this level, you're sending love in response to hate. You're saying, no matter what comes my way, I'm going to respond with love. The fourth principle I call, don't die with your music still in you. As Thoreau said, some of us hear a different drummer and must march to the music we hear. All of you have some music playing inside, and each of you has a heroic mission. There are no accidents in this universe. We all show up with a purpose. Too many of us are afraid to listen to our inner music and march to it. Perhaps you've wanted to write a book, compose music, or sing on stage. Maybe you dream of raising horses in Montana or opening an ice cream shop on Cape Cod. Maybe you just want to travel the world or enter a relationship you've been afraid to pursue. Whatever it is, don't get to the end of your life and leave that music unplayed. In Leo Tolstoy's novel, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, the protagonist lies on his deathbed contemplating a terrifying question. What if my whole life has been wrong? I know my music. It's playing right now as I stand before you. I feel completely on purpose and fulfilled. I will never come to the end of my life thinking it was wrong. Whatever your music is, however distant or strange it may sound to others, don't leave this world without having played it fully. The fifth principle is embracing silence. Silence is the pathway to making conscious contact with your source. When you quiet your mind through meditation, you discover where healing takes place. I can't tell you how many people suffering from serious illnesses have gone out into nature, communed with it, and begun to feel more connected to their source. Embrace silence. It's a way to know God, to know your source. Both are indivisible, and silence is perhaps the only experience in daily life that comes close to spiritual awakening. Continue with another vital principle. Giving up your personal history. I learned this from Carlos Castaneda, who once said, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history, and just like drinking, I gave it up. And only that has made all the difference in the world. The beautiful thing about giving up your personal history is that if you don't have a story, you don't have to live up to it. We all carry bags of what I'll call manure, our past, the people who've hurt us, the events that shaped us. We bond to these wounds and identify ourselves through them. Every so often we reach in, smear it all over ourselves, then wonder why our lives smell so bad. But merging into the now means letting go of that attachment. I once met a woman whose husband had left her after 25 years of marriage. She was suicidal, depressed, losing weight, and taking medications that were making her sicker. I told her, give up your personal history. Merge yourself into this moment. Think of your past as a hat. You can't just set it down and walk away because it'll always be there to look back at. Instead, you pick it up, embrace it, understand it, and accept that you had to go through these experiences to get where you are today. Then you toss it aside and merge into the now. Alan Watts talked about the wake of a boat not being what drives the boat forward. It's just the trail left behind. The wake of your life is the same. It doesn't drive your life. The reason your life is going in its current direction isn't because of that trail. What drives the boat is the present moment's energy. Give up your history, let it go, embrace it, understand it, get help if needed, and then move into the now. Another principle comes from Albert Einstein saying, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it to solve the problems in your life. You must change your mind. You literally rewrite your agreement with reality. One of the most difficult things to do is admit you were wrong, which is nothing more than saying, I've been making choices with my mind that have created things in my life that aren't working. And I no longer intend to continue making those choices. In relationships, the secret to success is putting your attention and energy on what you love rather than what you don't. Robert Frost said it beautifully. We love the things we love for what they are, not for what they ought to be or used to be, but for what they are. When you catch your children doing something right, which sometimes takes a lot of hunting, When you focus on what you love about your partner, that's when relationships flourish. The next principle is treating yourself as if you already were what you'd like to become. Get out in front of your life and see yourself as already having what you know you deserve. My children understand this perfectly. When my daughter wanted an expensive prom dress outside our budget, she already saw herself wearing it. She created a contract, took on extra babysitting jobs, and paid the difference because she understood that you treat yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become. There's a genius in you. Treat yourself as if you already embody that genius. See yourself as already there, and you'll act upon those thoughts. As Emerson said, the ancestor to every action is a thought. Another principle is treasuring your divinity. A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light, which flashes across his mind from within more than the luster of the firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his own thought, because it is his own. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. We often reject our thoughts as ordinary, then see them expressed by others as genius. Instead, treasure your divinity. Know that you're always connected to your source. There's no place where this source isn't present. It grows everyone's fingernails, beats everyone's hearts, digests everyone's food, opens all the flowers, and you can never be separated from it. Finally, wisdom is avoiding all thoughts that weaken you. Every thought has energy. Thoughts of shame, fear, stress, and anxiety will always weaken you. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child to feel ashamed, every shameful thought will weaken them. When you have a disempowering thought, shift it to one that empowers. Thoughts that empower are those of neutrality, willingness, love, and ultimately divinity. Now, I'd like to share a metaphor I find extremely helpful. When you squeeze an orange as hard as you can, what comes out? Orange juice, of course. Why? Because that's what's inside. It doesn't matter who squeezes it, what time of day it is, or what instrument they use. Orange juice comes out because that's what's inside. The same principle applies to you. When someone squeezes you, says something you don't like, puts pressure on you, upsets you, and out comes anger, hatred, fear, or stress. Why is that? Is it because of how they squeezed you? Never. It's because that's what's inside. How does what's inside get there? Only through your thinking. There's no anger in the world, no stress in the world. It's perfect as it is. It's all flowing as it should. The evidence is that it simply is. Your nature says to close up wounds and heal. But many of us bond to our wounds, keeping them open, showing them off, and wondering why they never heal. When you have resentment inside, when you carry fear, when you harbor thoughts of inadequacy, that's what comes out when you're squeezed. This is why I encourage you to fill yourself with love, kindness, peace, and joy. Then when life squeezes you, as it inevitably will, that's what will come out. I once had a woman from Chicago driving me around during a book tour. She had a terrible cold. And when I mentioned I hadn't had a cold in 20 years, she became upset. She said, "That's just what I needed to hear. People like you making us normal mortals feel guilty about having colds." I explained that I believe, like she does, that colds are viruses in the air that land on us. The difference, when they land on me, I talk to them. I tell them, "You've landed on the wrong immune system. I'm not going to give you any attention or room to flourish here." You might laugh. But when you keep your attention on what you don't want, that's what manifests in your life. Addictions have been described as never getting enough of what you don't want. When you shift your attention to what you do want and approach life with unconditional love, everything changes. The currency for attracting what we want is our thoughts. As you think, so shall you be. People who excel at manifesting what they want never allow their thoughts to focus on what they don't want. No matter who says you can't do this or you can't do that, they shift away from that energy instantly. That's what separates masters from those living in ordinary human awareness. I've been talking about consciousness awareness, a level of functioning that involves what I call spirituality. This isn't restricted to any religious framework. It's a divine intelligence, an organizing principle that's everywhere at once. Some call it God, others call it soul or spirit. Let me tell you about John Newton, a 23-year-old sea captain who experienced what the Japanese call satori, instant awakening. In Zen, there's a proverb: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Newton was transporting human cargo from Africa as slaves when he had this awakening and realized the horror of what he was doing. He wrote down on an envelope the words to a song he called Grace. I once was lost, and now I am found. It was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. In an instant, he shifted from his material world to being a spiritual being. A mind that is open to everything and attached nowhere. Keep an open mind and remember the words in the New Testament. With God, all things are possible. What does that leave out? Nothing. There's been a major shift in my life, taking the focus off things, accomplishments, acquisitions, and reputation, which we begin to identify ourselves as. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the French priest who was excommunicated for his outrageous ideas in 1918, said, "You're not here as a human being having a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. We are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience." Begin to live from this spiritual place, identifying yourself not based on what the ego says, what you have, what you accomplish, what you own, what others think of you, and not based on your separation from others or from God. Shift to an awareness of your own divinity and what's possible from that place. What if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there plucked a strange and wonderful flower? And what if when you awoke you had that flower in your hand? What then? Is such a thing possible? To go into a formless state and bring back something with substance, boundaries, and form. Many would doubt it, but each of you is an example of exactly that. You came from a formless place and are now formed. Every flower began as a seed, which began as something invisible. Everything you needed for this physical journey was provided for you. The great Dyer teaches that none of us are doing anything. We're all just being done. When you look at your physical body, you recognize this truth. What can you do to change it? Things are drooping. Hair is turning gray or disappearing altogether. You begin to see there's a part of you beyond the physical, metaphysical, transformed, higher than form. This part of you has infinite possibilities and can do anything, heal anything, manifest anything, attract the right people into your life. The invisible essence of who you are can access higher levels of awareness as you elevate your consciousness. We were all conceived and born into a world and culture where we were raised to be ordinary. Ordinary isn't bad. It means fitting in, getting along, being a good citizen, filling out forms, paying taxes, providing for your family, going to school, getting good grades, graduating, and so on. Then becoming a grandparent, living through your grandchildren, and dying. But if ordinary consciousness is here at my waist, extraordinary awareness is up here. Extraordinary encompasses all of ordinary, but doesn't stop there, like in that old song. Is that all there is? There's something in each of us that transcends the physical that wants to move to an extraordinary level beyond the ego. The ego is what I call earth guide only, the part of us that says we're separate from others, separate from God, separate from our environment, and therefore in competition. Our value is based on how much we have, how attractive we are, how much money we possess. But in each of us is another self, the sacred or higher self. That doesn't care how much you get or who you're better than. This higher self wants only one, for you to be at peace. Your ego says it's more important to be right. But your higher self asks you to be kind rather than right. In every interaction, with your spouse, ex-spouse, parents, children, strangers on the freeway, flight attendants, waiters, if you can subdue the ego that insists on being right and instead choose peace, your life transforms. If I gave you a magic wand and said you could have anything material you wanted, cars, clothes, homes, or I could give you another wand that would bring you peace for every moment of your life, which would you choose? Being at peace is what your sacred self longs for. Cummings wrote, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you just like everybody else means to fight the greatest battle there is to fight and never stop fighting. It's about going beyond average. Beyond ordinary, recognizing your own divinity. Your soul wants something very different than your physical ego apparatus wants. It's not interested in fitting in, being right, or being liked. The ideal of the soul isn't knowledge or light or happiness. It's space, amenity, freedom to expand, to reach out, to embrace the infinite. The ideal of the soul is infinity. What is infinite? It means always expanding, never stopping anywhere, always growing, like the universe. Try to imagine what's at the end of it. A wall. And what's on the other side of that wall? Where does that end? Getting in touch with this infinite part of ourselves means listening to that voice that says, don't fence me in. Nobody likes being told what to do. The number one marker of self-actualizing people is their independence from the good opinion of others. They're just not interested in being told what to do. Steve Jobs told Stanford graduates, don't live somebody else's dharma. Listen to that inner calling, and don't pay attention to anyone telling you what's possible or impossible. Your soulmate isn't someone who's just like you. It's often the person you have difficulty with who pushes your buttons. These are our greatest teachers because they show us where we haven't mastered ourselves, where we haven't learned to choose peace. When you feel strong passion toward what you want to become or create, it doesn't matter whether anyone else understands it. You don't try to explain it, you just listen and become a disturbing element in the world. That's the only way you'll ever feel fulfilled. You won't get it by fitting in. For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all the horrors of the half-lived life. The half-lived life gets you to ordinary, filling out forms and then stopping. But the self-actualized life starts at ordinary and listens to its soul, which you can't find but know is there. I've been reading, studying, and lecturing for years, and I've been given a big voice and all. I've had the wonderful opportunity to share the miraculous power that comes when we start our life from ordinary and move into extraordinary, this place that all great writers speak about, where we transcend the ego that believes who we are is so important, that we're in competition with others and must defeat them. The great Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore wrote, I went out alone on my way to my tryst. But who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self. My Lord, he knows no shame, but I, the invisible me, I'm ashamed to come to thee in his That's the ego, the part that makes dust rise with our swagger. But inside there's a being saying, who I am is so much more than that. The percentage of people willing to leave ordinary behind is very small. René Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am, though I believe it should be. I am, therefore I think, wrote her to reach the truth. It is necessary at some point in one's life to rid oneself of all the opinions one has ever received and to rebuild one's entire system of knowledge from the very foundation. This journey fundamentally involves changing your concept of yourself, everything you believe to be true about yourself and what's possible. You've been raised to be ordinary, to believe in your limits. These limits have been imposed by well-meaning parents, grandparents, culture, religion, business, and education. But your soul has no finiteness. It's infinite, always wanting to expand and grow. What separates the extraordinary from the ordinary is the willingness to listen to that soul and follow where it leads, regardless of what others think or expect. That's the path to true fulfillment, to a life fully lived. You know, I was sitting in an airport not long ago watching people rush by. Everyone seemed so busy, so caught up in their agendas, their schedules, their problems. And I started wondering, how many of these people are actually aware of who they truly are? How many know they're spiritual beings having a human experience? Most of us have been conditioned to believe that success means accumulating things, bigger houses, fancier cars, more prestigious titles. But that's not what your soul is interested in. Your soul is interested in expanding, in connecting, and experiencing the fullness of what it means to be alive. I remember visiting a man who was very wealthy by conventional standards. He had houses all over the world, a fleet of cars, private jets, all the trappings of material success. But when we talked, he confessed that he felt, I've achieved everything I set out to achieve. he told me, and yet I feel like something's missing. What was missing was a connection to his spiritual nature. He had focused all his energy on accumulating wealth and possessions, but he had neglected the infinite part of himself that longs for meaning, for purpose, for connection to something larger than himself. Contrast that with a woman I met who lived very simply but radiated joy and peace. She had very little in terms of material possessions, but she had cultivated a rich inner life. She spent time in nature, in meditation, in service to others. And she told me, I feel so blessed. Every day is a miracle to me. The difference between these two people wasn't their circumstances, but their awareness. One was living from the ego, constantly striving for more, never satisfied. The other was living from the soul, appreciating the abundance that was already present, feeling connected to all of life. This doesn't mean we can't enjoy material comforts or strive for success in the world. It means that we recognize these things for what they are, temporary manifestations in the physical realm, not the ultimate source of our happiness or worth. Think about what happens when you die. You don't take any of your possessions with you. You don't take your job title, your bank account, or your social media followers. What you take is the essence of who you've become, the love you've given and received, the awareness you've cultivated. So why not live from that place now? Why not recognize that the most precious thing you have is not something external, but the consciousness with which you experience? I once heard a story about a fisherman who lived in a small coastal village. He would go out early each morning, catch a few fish, and return by midday. He'd spend the rest of his time playing with his children, taking naps with his wife, and visiting with friends in the evening. One day, a businessman from the city saw him and said, "You know, you're pretty good at fishing. Why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish?" "Why would I do that?" the fisherman asked. "Well, you could sell the extra fish and make more money," the businessman replied. "And then what?" "Then you could buy a bigger boat and hire some people to help you and catch even more fish." "And then what?" the fisherman asked again. "Well, eventually you could have a whole fleet of boats and a processing plant. You'd be wealthy." "And then what?" Then the businessman said triumphantly, "You could retire, move to a small coastal village, sleep late, play with your grandchildren, take afternoon naps with your wife, and spend your evenings visiting with friends." The fisherman smiled and said, "But that's what I'm doing now." This simple story illustrates the difference between living from the ego and living from the soul. The ego is always chasing after something. More money, more recognition, more possessions. It believes happiness lies in the future. The soul, on the other hand, knows that happiness is available right now, in this moment, if we're open to it. Now, I'm not suggesting we all become fishermen or renounce ambition. I'm suggesting that we examine our motivations, that we ask ourselves, am I pursuing this because my ego wants it or because my soul calls me to it? Am I chasing after something because I believe it will make me happy? Or am I already happy and allowing my happiness to infuse everything I do? When you follow the calling of your soul, when you do what brings you joy and allows you to serve others, success often follows naturally. But it's a different kind of success, one that nourishes you on all levels, not just materially. I know a man who left a high-paying corporate job to become a teacher because he felt called to work with young people. His salary dropped dramatically, but his satisfaction soared. For the first time, he told me, "I feel like what I'm doing matters. I feel like I'm making a difference." That's the kind of success your soul recognizes. Making a difference, being of service, living with integrity and joy. The irony is that when you follow your soul's calling, the material world often responds with abundance. Not because you're chasing after it, but because you're aligned with your true purpose. You're in the flow of life rather than struggling against it. I've seen this happen time and again. People who follow their passion, who do what they love and what serves others, often find that their needs are met in surprising ways. Doors open that they didn't even know existed. Opportunities arise that they couldn't have planned for. But this requires trust. Trust in something larger than your ego, larger than your limited understanding of how things should work. It requires surrendering to the wisdom of your soul, which knows far more than your conscious mind does about what will bring you fulfillment. This doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing, waiting for the universe to drop opportunities in your lap. It means you take inspired action, guided by your inner knowing rather than by fear or greed or the expectations of others. I remember years ago, I felt called to write my first book. I had no idea how to get published, no connections in the publishing world. But I felt so strongly that this was what I was meant to do that I sat down and wrote anyway. When the manuscript was done, I sent it out to publishers and got rejection after rejection. But instead of giving up, I kept going. I believed in what I was doing. I wasn't writing to become famous or to make money. I was writing because I had something I needed to share. Eventually, a small publisher took a chance on me. The book didn't sell many copies at first, but it touched the people who read it. And those people told others, and gradually my audience grew. If I had been focused solely on external success, on sales figures and reviews and recognition, I might have given up after those initial rejections. But because I was following my soul's calling, I persevered. And now, years later, that book has reached millions of people around the world. That's the power of living from your soul rather than your ego. The ego gets discouraged by setbacks because it's attached to specific outcomes. The soul sees setbacks as part of the journey, as opportunities for growth and learning. The ego says, I failed. The soul says, I learned. The ego says, I'm not good enough. The soul says, I'm exactly where I need to be. The ego says, what will others think? The soul says, what feels right to me? When you live from your soul, you stop comparing yourself to others. You recognize that each person has a unique path, a unique contribution to make. You're not better or worse than anyone else. You're simply you with your own gifts, your own challenges, your own journey. This doesn't mean you become selfish or disconnected from others. On the contrary, when you're living from your soul, you feel more connected to all of life. You recognize that we're all expressions of the same source, all part of the same whole. And from that recognition comes compassion, generosity, and a desire to be of service. Service doesn't have to mean grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. It can be as simple as offering a kind word to someone who's struggling, listening with full attention when someone needs to talk, or doing your work with care and integrity. What matters isn't the scale of the service, but the love with which it's offered. I've known people who changed the world through dramatic actions, founding schools in impoverished areas, developing new medical treatments, leading movements for social change. And I've known people who changed their small corner of the world through daily acts of kindness and presence. Both are valuable, both are necessary. What's important is that you find your own way to serve, your own way to express the love and creativity that flow through you. That's your music, the unique melody that only you can play in the symphony of life. And remember, it's never too late to start playing your music. I've known people who discovered their true calling in their 70s or 80s, who started new careers or creative pursuits after retirement, who found love after decades of solitude. The soul doesn't recognize the limitations of age or circumstance. It knows only the eternal now, the infinite possibility of this moment. So I ask you, what's your music? What's the song your soul is longing to sing? What's the contribution only you can make to the world? You might not know the answer yet, and that's okay. Finding your soul's calling is a process, a journey of discovery. It involves listening deeply, trying things that call to you, noticing what brings you joy and a sense of purpose. Sometimes your soul speaks in whispers, in subtle nudges, in quiet longings that you might overlook if you're not paying attention. That's why practices like meditation, spending time in nature, or engaging in creative activities can be so valuable. They help quiet the noise of the world and the chatter of the ego so you can hear the whispers of your soul. Sometimes your soul speaks through your dissatisfaction, through the nagging feeling that there must be more to life than what you're experiencing. Don't ignore that feeling. It's a sign that you're ready to expand, to grow, to move from ordinary to extraordinary awareness. Sometimes your soul speaks through other people, through books or music or art that deeply moves you, through synchronicities and coincidences that aren't really coincidences at all. Pay attention to these messages. They're signposts pointing you toward your true path. I've met so many people who say, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't have a passion like some people do. But often, they're overthinking it. Your purpose doesn't have to be dramatic or world-changing. It doesn't have to be something you do professionally. It can be as simple as bringing joy to others, creating beauty in your surroundings, or being fully present with the people you love. The key is to start where you are. Don't wait for perfect clarity before taking action. Take one small step in the direction that feels right, then another, then another. The path will reveal itself as you walk it. And be patient with yourself. The journey to living from your soul rather than your ego isn't a straight line. We all have moments when we fall back into old patterns, when we react from fear rather than love, when we forget our true nature and get caught up in the drama of everyday life. When that happens, and it will be gentle with yourself. Notice what's happening without judgment. Take a deep breath. Remember who you really are. And then choose again. Every moment offers a new opportunity to choose. Will you listen to your ego with its fears and judgments and need to be right? Or will you listen to your soul with its wisdom and compassion and desire for peace? The choice is always yours. No one can make it for you. That's both the challenge and the gift of being human. We have free will. We can choose our attitude, our response, our focus in any given moment. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps during World War II. Everything could be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Even in the most difficult circumstances, we have that freedom. The freedom to choose how we respond, how we see ourselves and our situation, what meaning we give to our experiences. So I invite you to exercise that freedom consciously. Choose to see yourself as a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. Choose to listen to the wisdom of your soul rather than the fears of your ego. Choose to play your unique music in the world, whatever that may be. And remember that you're not alone on this journey. We're all walking this path together, all learning, all growing, all seeking to remember who we truly are. When we support each other in this remembering, when we see and honor the divine in each other, we create a more loving, more peaceful, more joyful world for everyone. Let's begin right now. Look around you. See the divine in the people sitting next to you. See it in yourself. Feel the connection that transcends our apparent separateness. And from that place of connection, that place of love, go forth and live your extraordinary life. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your attention, your openness, your willingness to explore these ideas with me. It's been an honor and a joy to share this time with you. May you walk in peace and fulfillment all the days of your life.